The universe of Warhammer 40k is filled with all different kinds of weapons. From the Emperor's flaming sword to the god-killing death rays of the Necrons, there's about 1,000,001 different tools you can wage war with in the grim dark future. Today though, we're going to take a look at the Bolter, the workhorse of the Adeptus Astartes, and probably the most iconic weapon in Warhammer 40k. Welcome back to Starhammer. Since the Great Crusade, the Bolter has been the weapon of choice for the Space Marine forces, replacing the older and more complex Volkite weapons. The reliable Bolter was easy to use, easier to maintain, and could be mass-produced to keep the legions of the Astartes supplied with the devastating shock weapons they need to more easily combat the enemies of mankind. It was the masterful warcraft of the Astartes, combined with the brutality of the Bolter, that struck fear into the hearts of every Xenos and heretic the Imperium encountered. Bolters fire these little self-propelled shells, colloquially known as bolts, that explode upon impact with the target. So think of it in the context of like a hollow point round in real life. It's the same mechanic. You can imagine the fear anyone would feel as they hear the thunder of bolter shots and see their comrades in arms being blown to pieces before their corpses even touch the ground. The constant state of war the Imperium faced even took a toll on the bolters themselves. The tech priests and artisans were constantly working to manufacture, maintain, and improve the aging technology so that the battle could continue to be prosecuted. While bolters are much more commonplace and significantly easier to mass produce than their Volkite predecessors, the weapons can still only be crafted by a select few using only the highest quality materials. Even the bolts themselves are considered works of art and held to the same high standards. And Space Marines regularly perform rituals of maintenance to appease the machine spirit in the weapon, lest it fail them in battle. While a ton of different bolter patterns exist, I want to focus on a few that are most common on the tabletop and in the lore, and depending on where you look. To start, we've got the Mark II Call Pattern Bolter. This is the standard issue bolter for Primaris Space Marines. Named after its designer, Archimagos Dominus Belisarius Call, this bolter is highly customizable, enabling the Astartes to adapt their weapons platform to adjust to any mission parameter. Functionally, it's the same bolter used by the Firstborn Space Marines, though it does possess a little more armor penetration and range than Firstborn bolters. Next up, we've got the Bolt Pistol, or, as it's known amongst the Imperial Guard, the Bravery Bolter, due to officers using it to field execute those too cowardly to fight the Emperor's enemies. Wielded by Commissars, the Sisters of Battle, and Battle Line Space Marines, the Bolt Pistol is a solid backup weapon packing 6 to 12 rounds in a magazine. Often you'll find these being used in conjunction with a chainsword or other melee weapon, allowing the wielder to seamlessly change between ranged combat and melee combat. You can even modify these with a drum mag to have the same ammo capacity as a Storm Bolter. There's a heavy bolt pistol variant utilized by the Primaris Space Marines, but aside from a larger profile and a longer barrel, there's really not much difference. Combi bolters were weapons designed during the Horus Heresy in order to supplement the lethality and the tactical flexibility of Terminator squads. Essentially, these are two weapons melded together to make a nice little two-in-one package. Sometimes this would be another bolter type, but it could also be with other guns, such as a plasma gun, grab gun, melta, or whatever, to allow for a weapon that could tackle a variety of different scenarios. In the modern 40k setting, the combi bolter has largely been phased out by the Imperium in favor of the Storm Bolter, though the combis still find their home in the hands of the Chaos Legions and certain Imperial units such as the Stern Guard vets. Storm Bolters ended up replacing the combi bolters after the Horus Heresy. These were double-barrel bolter patterns fed by a hefty box mag, which held anywhere from 60 to 150 rounds, depending on the mag. These weapons were given to the Terminator squads, as the simultaneous firing of both barrels could provide a much greater volume of fire than what the combi weapons could produce. With as bulky as Terminator armor is, these weapons required much less dexterity to use than their combi counterparts, and quickly became the mainstay among fast assault units. While not normally found among standard troops, the Storm Bolter can be found on vehicles, or as a wrist-mounted weapon of the Grey Knights, or at times as a special weapon carried by the Sisters of Battle. As one of the rare cases of technological advancement after the Horus Heresy, the Storm Bolter was quickly pushed into service to phase out the less efficient combi weapons. The Heavy Bolter is a bit different from other bolters in both form and function. It's much larger than the other bolters and is actually fairly common among most Imperial forces. It has a very high rate of fire, an incredibly durable build, and is often used on tanks or in emplacements as an anti-infantry weapon. Functionally, these bolters feed and fire in a very unusual way. Instead of a firing pin striking the primer of a round being fed by exhaust gases that cycle the ammunition, heavy bolters utilize an electronic pulse in the firing chamber, and the rounds are cycled via an electric motor. The exhaust gases are actually used to provide the power needs for the weapon. This allows the bolter to maintain an obscene rate of fire that a regular bolter could never compare to. Due to the hefty nature of the design and the intense recoil, those not rocking power armor are operating this weapon in two-man teams, consisting of a shooter and a loader. Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, and the like can carry the weapon and the ammunition by themselves, and can actually provide pretty accurate fire from a braced standing position. The weapon also has an integrated HUD feature and targeting laser to assist with aiming, and due to its intense recoil, it has gotten the nickname of the Bruiser or the Backbreaker to those normal dudes like you and I who get stuck firing this thing. So what if you took one of the heavy bolters and smushed it down to a compact size? Well, that's exactly what Archimagos Dominus Belisarius Call did. God, what a mouthful of a name. Call created the Assault Bolter, a portable version of a heavy bolter. It's rocking a weighted shield to help compensate for recoil, and a huge mag to compensate for its insane fire rate. Though limited in range due to its short barrel, the Assault Bolter is still a force to be reckoned with, particularly when it's used by its most common operator, the Primaris and Scepter squads. Now, there's two particularly special bolter types I'd like to get into as we start to wrap these things up. The first is the Oculus Bolt Rifle. This is a compact standard bolter, but equipped with an extremely sophisticated Oculus sight array. Using an enslaved machine spirit, these optics process all the conditions of the battlefield thousands of times faster than any human can, and then it feeds that information directly into the user's HUD. The result is the shooter almost having a godlike precognition on the battlefield. They can see targets through walls, total darkness, thick smoke. They can sense the emerging energy of teleporting hostiles, and even feel the tremors of tunneling enemies. They can even predict enemy attacks based on attack behaviors and patterns. You'll often find these in the hands of Primaris and Cursor squads, utilizing them in an aggressive, close support combat role. Last but not least is the Psi Cannon. Built specifically to fight the demonic entities of the warp, the Psi Cannon is essentially a beefed up heavy bolter. Firing psychically charged, ritually inscribed Psi bolts, these weapons are most often found wielded by the Grey Knights, as the Psi bolts are particularly devastating to the physical forms of psychers, demons, or anyone else possessed by the warp. And there you have it. Now you know a little bit about the bolter and some of the popular versions of it. There are a ton more different bolter types, but I decided to do the ones that I've encountered the most in lore and in my tabletop adventures. But drop a like if you like it, subscribe if you really liked it, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to keep up with all my latest videos. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I'll see you in the next one. Toodles.